Hi, my name's Erin McGuire Henson. I just got married, so I'm trying to remember that. Remember that I have a different last name. I am an intuitive channel, a healer for many years. I started my journey as a yoga teacher back in 2009, really, and I'm also a somatic coach, a coach and a healer for many, many years, for over like 15 years now. And I want to just share a little bit because I have a program coming up soon, my somatic coaching and healing program. It's coming up and it's starting soon. And so it's part of my Lightworker Academy program, and I'll go into that a bit later. But I want to just share like a video for anybody that's searching for deeper levels of healing. So I'm going to start by just telling a little bit about my story, where I came from and how I came into this work and what it did for me. So I grew up as an only child of my mom has narcissistic tendencies, alcoholism, all of those things. And it was just me and her, right? I didn't have brothers and sisters to rely on. I didn't have a dad around to rely on. So I really grew up in a way that was very chaotic. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of emotional and verbal abuse, not a lot of physical abuse, but I grew up in such a way that there wasn't a lot of predictability, there wasn't a lot of safety. It's like she might have been nice 1 minute and kind of going off the rails the next minute is how I remember it. And that's the other thing. I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood because I think I was living in such a disassociated state, meaning, we disassociate just naturally as kids when there's trauma, when there's unsafety. So I'm also a natural, highly sensitive human, and an empath. I don't know if the empath, I don't know if I'll ever know if I was a born empath. And I don't know this. Are we born empaths or do we become empaths because of the environments we grew up in? A lot of people that I know that are highly sensitive and that are empaths had a lot of childhood trauma. So that's still a question I'm waiting to um, get an answer on. But, my nervous system, being a highly sensitive person just means your nervous system, it affects 20% of the population. So I do believe I was born that way. Just means your nervous system is more sensitive to things around you. So when you are a highly sensitive person and you grow up in trauma, it's kind of like everything gets magnified because my nervous system is already quite sensitive to noise, to sensation, to external things going on. So I already have that sensitivity. And then when you partner that with growing up with somebody who's supposed to be there to nourish and keep you safe, and instead is kind of erratic and, screaming and yelling here or there, and, happy 1 minute, going off the next, it just, it was like a recipe for an extra big disaster in terms of my nervous system. But I didn't know that, right? We're kids. We grow up, our nervous system adjusts to what is going on in the environment. And that's a key piece that I'm going to bring back in a second, but I still want to just share a little bit about my story. So, growing up in kind of that erotic, chaotic environment just really wired me in a certain way that, I think I developed anxiety at an early age. In fact, being an intuitive channel, I do see certain things in my own experience, and then also with my clients. I can see when certain things started, and kind of getting to the root of where things began. And for me, I had a vision of like sitting at the table. I was maybe like 4 years old. And my mom, I can see what she's wearing, and she's pacing back and forth and pacing back and forth. She's in a long brown silk nightgown, touches the floor. And she's pacing and she's crying. And the vague memory that I have is that somebody that was very close to her passed away, like they drowned. And I think she was freaking out about that, right? Having a lot of emotion about that. And what I intuitively gathered from that experience is that that is when I was wired for anxiety. Because here I am, this 4-year-old child, and really a big part of my work is like, we have to remember what those things were like. Because the brain is going to block that stuff out, but the little part of you still remembers, and that's in there, and that's what's causing dysregulation. That's what's causing being anxious. That's what's causing being stuck in overwhelm or having chronic health issues. And so that little child within me, or that little child that I was, I'm 4 years old. I'm seeing the person that's supposed to create safety for me pacing and pacing. And it's not to say that parents have to be perfect, right? Like things happen in life that are going to cause emotional reaction. But there wasn't any conversation about that with me. There wasn't like, honey, sorry, mom was, really upset. This is what happened. It's really sad, or whatever conversation, needs to happen to calm that child. I didn't have anybody else to go back to. So it just created this spin, like I'm not safe. So that's kind of the intuitive vision I was given. And I do actually remember that experience. So my nervous system, therefore, wired me to be an anxious individual because anxiety is protection. Anxiety keeps us alert. It keeps us ready to move, ready to get out of the way if that person is being erratic, ready to go and do something else, so that we can stay safe. Keeps us on edge, right? Like constantly just like ready for what that external environment may give us next. And, there's studies that have been done on rats, many, many studies, but one in particular that's really fascinating to me is the study of CUTS, which is an acronym for chronic, unpredictable, toxic stress. So when you grow up in that environment where it's very unpredictable, again, nice 1 minute, erratic the next, or yelling the next, what they did is they studied rats and they would flash lights at different times. They would take their food away for maybe days at a time. They would do all these things that were very unpredictable that would cause the rats stress. And meanwhile, they were studying their brains. And they noticed that those rats, not surprisingly, have an increase in depression and anxiety. And we're showing signs of that. So I think a lot of us grew up with that chronic, unpredictable, toxic stress, or grew up with childhood trauma, whatever that may be. And again, your nervous system is just wired to protect you. So it's just going to turn on the nervous system states, the stress response states of fight, flight, or fawn. And then on the extreme level, freeze. Freeze is like a possum playing dead. That's where we just kind of go into a real isolated, a real almost depression. That's kind of depression lives in the freeze response, and that's a more extreme version. So people that have had sexual trauma, um, people that have had really severe trauma tend to be more in that freeze. And then there's a little bit less than that. There's a functional freeze where it's like you're still able to go do your work, you're functioning in the world, but you're exhausted, you're isolating yourself, you're not really doing anything, you're procrastinating, you just want to lay on the couch and scroll or binge watch things. You're just kind of like checked out. And I was certainly there when I had chronic fatigue. So let me get to that story. So growing up with trauma, I ended up getting diagnosed with CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. And that's where there's been several experiences of trauma that combine together to make it complex. And the difference between complex PTSD and regular PTSD is that PTSD is like there's let's think of somebody that goes to war. They witness tragic experiences and they're flashing back to that experience, maybe seeing their best friend die right next to them would be horrifying, right? And so the flashback is them going back to that experience again and again and again and again. Complex PTSD, because there's so many different experiences, the flashback is what is called an emotional flashback. And those are very, very sneaky. You have no idea that you're in one a lot of times. And that's where a part of you is flashing back to being in that helpless state as a child, helpless, powerless, because as children, right, that's what, we can't stand up against our parent, right? So we're in more of a helpless state. And so we're flashing back emotionally versus to seeing a picture of what happened and reliving that experience. So, and I was also diagnosed with anxiety disorder, not surprisingly. So that those diagnoses came after I was experiencing extreme chronic fatigue and hypothyroidism and hormonal imbalances. And doctors didn't know what to do with me. They fixed the levels of my thyroid, and I was still exhausted. So then he wanted to put me on antidepressants. And I knew that was not the answer for me. I knew that's not what I personally needed. So I started doing research. And I learned that if you have an ACE score, an adverse childhood experience of 4 or more, and I think I have like a 6, you are, it's 5 times, 4 times, 5 times, I'm forgetting the exact number, more susceptible to getting chronic fatigue. And not to mention that, autoimmune disorders, just in general, cancers increase, depression increases. The bigger your ACE score, the bigger chance you have of chronic health issues. So finally, something made sense. It was connecting back to my early childhood experience of being in this erratic environment. I got bullied a lot for being really skinny. That added to it. There was sexual trauma, unfortunately, in my life when I was younger and when I was older, and that added to it. And so it's just like all of that combined just led to my body being stuck, my nervous system being stuck in a fight, flight, fawn, and freeze trauma response. For me, everybody has their go-to. Mine is more flight and fawn. Fawn is the people pleasing. Flight is when you're in anxiety a lot. Fight is obviously when you're really reactive, you want to fight, there's a lot of information there. So I'm trying to keep this as concise as possible. But so that was my experience. And I didn't know that that was the reason why my body started breaking down, why the health issues started showing up in my mid 30s and early 40s. As somebody who's, decently healthy, eats well, so on and so forth. It was very confusing to me. And again, the doctors, they're just doing what they're doing, but they just have protocols. It's like, okay, check this. If this gets better, okay, then the next step is antidepressants. And then he was kind of like, there's really nothing I can do with you after that because I didn't want to take the antidepressants. So my point in sharing all this story is when I found somatic work and nervous system healing, and I learned to deeply understand my own nervous system, learned how to connect that to what I had growing up, learned how to manage triggers within my body, learned how to really feel what was going on instead of escaping those feelings, escaping those sensations. learning how to regulate my nervous system when it was dysregulated. And it's a multi-level process. Not only that, I also had to really learn where I was going into fear because the nervous system is just responding to what you're thinking. When I learned all of these things and got myself out of subconscious limiting beliefs, that is when I started to see a change. And when I say I had chronic fatigue, that was my main symptom. I also had hormonal imbalances and a lot of other things. When I say I have chronic fatigue, it wasn't like I was just like, oh, I'm kind of tired today. It was like, no, Aaron had left the building. I felt like I was dragging myself around behind me. I was just kind of like a zombie. I felt like a zombie and I needed to be in bed, just laying flat. I wouldn't even sleep. I'd either be watching TV or I'd have my computer on my knees. I'd have my feet up, my knees bent, and I would just work on my laptop in bed, doing whatever I needed to do for my work. That is how I lived pretty much for 2 years. And all my energy would go to working with my clients. And, I would have the energy for that, but like that was it. And then I would just be like, okay, now I need to go lay down. I didn't have a social life, like nothing. And within 6 months of finding somatic work and nervous system healing, I healed chronic fatigue. I also got off thyroid medication because that was never helping my symptom of fatigue to begin with. So I tapered off with my doctor's help. And my doctor knew about trauma and how that affects the body, but that was never discussed. But I remember asking, I was like, yeah, I've been learning about this, and this is why I want to get off of my thyroid. And he's like, oh, yeah, totally. I'm like, so why isn't this a part of the conversation? But again, it's just their protocols. So I can tell you on the other side of doing that work, and I did it sparingly over the 6 months. I was pretty focused on it daily, but I wasn't like doing it all the time. It really changed how I feel. It rewired not just my nervous system, but also my brain. And, helped me tap into my feminine energy because I was stuck in a very masculine energy of like go, 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 doing all the time, performing, trying, and a lot of that is connected to limiting subconscious beliefs of like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not enough. And like I had to go back and really rewire in a whole different way through energy work that I do, through the nervous system work, through releasing trapped emotions. I had to go back to my early experiences to help myself through that with inner child work as well. It really helped me calm down. Um, I ended up actually healing anxiety as well. That came later, but shifting out of anxious states in my work and really grounding myself and feeling more calm, feeling more grounded, feeling more present with the people around me, um, just experiencing more joy, like on a daily basis. Because when you're in those trauma or stress response states like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, you're in survival mode. I was stuck in overwhelm, just like spinning all the time. Like, I got to do this, I got to do that. Blah, 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 blah. And it was just like this constant, like, urgency feeling within me. And you're stuck in survival in those states. And so you're not able to like be present with like the world around you, to be grounded, to like feel just calm inside. Like that is a completely different experience. And a part of you will reject that. Like a part of me really would feel guilty when I would rest because I was so wired that that love and affection and things from people came from what I did. So all of that has to be rewired. So it's not just nervous system healing, but nervous system healing and somatic work was a very big piece of the puzzle. And this is why it is the reason I healed chronic fatigue 100%. But I'm just saying there are a few other pieces to the puzzle that have to be addressed if you've had childhood trauma like I did. There are other pieces going on that are filtering to, because what I've noticed recently within the last year, and what I want to talk, I touched on it before, but is when we go into these fear states, whether we are afraid of what's happening in the future, what's happening in politics, what's happening with, in our economy, um, your job, your health, whatever. If you're in these chronic states of fear and you're thinking, I don't know what's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. You know how the mind goes. You're kind of spinning a little bit. Your nervous system it's not rational. It doesn't go, oh, she's just having a bad day, thinking some bad thoughts, she's fine though. No, the nervous system, it's your animal. It's your animal instinct. Nervous system hears fear. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're thinking fearful thoughts, it's sending neurochemicals into your body, and your nervous system is going, danger, 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 danger. We have to amp her up because she is not safe right now. It's reacting the same way as if there was a bear about to chase you. That is the response of your nervous system when you're thinking fearful thoughts. And for me, those have been started coming up this summer with having to pay for a wedding. We moved to Florida. I'm reestablishing my work here. We're wanting to buy a house. There's like all these things happening. And I was like waking up with all these fearful thoughts. Like, well, how am I going to do this? And my nervous system was just like freaking out and sending me into fight or flight again. So it's like, once you do the work, it doesn't mean you're done. Okay. Like, this is ongoing. This is the rest of your life, especially if you grew up like I did. My brain is already different. It's already wired differently than a non-trauma brain. My brain is wired to go into overwhelm quite quickly. So I have to work extra hard. I have to be extra diligent to keep myself relaxed. And so we can just go into fear-based thoughts so easily. And again, the nervous system is just going to react as if there's a bear about to chase you. It doesn't think, it's not like, oh, she's just thinking thoughts. No, it's like there's a bear back there and it's going to chase her. Activation. And then we're going to crash, right? And so that's where we get, we gain weight because we're like yo-yoing with our nervous system. We're getting activated and then we're dropping into freeze, getting activated, dropping into freeze. Sometimes some people do that. So I'm sharing all of this because it's deeply important to me to talk about somatic work. And because it was such a game changer for me. And I have a program coming up. It's starting March 18th. So there's the full 10-month program. It's called the Lightworker Program. One of my missions is to awaken other lightworkers, other healers, give them tools, and give them the ability to make an impact and an income. So teaching them, we have the Lightworker Business School as part of that. So it includes the somatic coaching program, which I'll also talk about. That's 3 months long, so you learn how to become a somatic coach. Then there's the energy meridians and EFT. So we're learning about where we get trapped emotions in the organs, how to release. That's 2 months long. Then there's the 3-month energy healing. That's where we're going to go deep into the subconscious mind, really understanding what those limiting beliefs are, where they are, and how to release them with a very special energy healing practice, as well as quantum manifesting. That's 3 months long. And then there's 2-month Lightworker Business School. So that's the whole 10-month program that you can be a part of that's going to give you all of the things to rewire your mind, your body, and to tap you into your most aligned self, your power. So it's mind, body, spirit, but you're activating, we're moving through. So you don't have to do this. You don't have to want to be a coach or a healer to do this program. You're going to go through your own healing transformation, regardless if you want to be a coach or not. But if you do, it is a certification program to allow you and give you the tools to do that. And I broke it up this year into 4 separate programs. So you can do a couple of the pieces, you can do the whole thing. That's what I recommend. And you save $1,200 if you do the whole program. But if you're just like, you know what, I just really want to work on somatic work, you can join me. Again, that's what starts March 18th. It's 3 months long, and we are going to go deep into rewiring our nervous systems, healing trauma, helping our inner child, detoxifying of these chronic states we've been in, releasing, the patterns of overwhelm and anxiety and all those things that have been leading to chronic stress and disease, like autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, so on and so forth. I will not be surprised if people do that program and their symptoms completely shift, because that's the power of doing that work. So that starts March 18th, the somatic coaching, as well as the beginning of the Lightworker Academy. So if you want information on either of those, I will leave links below this video, and or message me. You can email me at purelighealings with an S, healings dot or at gmail.com, purelighealings at gmail.com. You can also email me there. But I would be thrilled to support you in your healing journey, as well as if you're feeling that call to help others. Because, like me, I attract people that have a story, people that have been through hell on some level. And that story, that your trauma becomes your transformation when you use it to help another. Your pain becomes your purpose when you use it to help another. And it's through your story that you're going to attract the people to you. And I teach you all how to do that in the full Lightworker Academy program, how to share your story, how to show up and be that light that people are looking for, because there's people that are in pain, that they need the tools, the life experience and the medicine that only you can give. I'm going to teach you the modalities and how to have an online and or in-person business, but you're going to bring your own energy and your own frequency and your own experiences to those modalities. And you're going to do it in your own way, in your own story. So I would be so ecstatic to talk to you more about joining this program. I do speak to everybody before they join because I want a very cohesive group of people that are really ready for this work. And I would love to talk to you about it. First step is to fill out just a short application on the website. There will be a link below this video. Again, you can also email me any questions. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to this story, and would love to know your thoughts.